There's a reason why everyone debates which season of SpongeBob SquarePants is the best one. To be honest, there's no general consensus on which one is the best. Whenever the topic comes up, it's always a mixed bag of opinions from my experience. There are those who look upon Season 1 as the magnum opus, never to be topped as it's the nostalgic crown jewel of the series. There are those who see Season 1 as amazing, yet view it as a primer for Season 2, which nailed that same formula, meanwhile managing to knock it out of the park comedically. I mean, that comedic genius continued into Season 3. It's just not possible to narrow down which of the first 3 seasons was the best because, well, it's subjective. However, along the way, every season had so many iconic moments, especially early on. Season 2, though, really laid so much foundation for this show's iconic comedy style to thrive. It really paved a clear path for where the show would be heading for the time being, and it's one that I'm sure all of us look back on fondly. And that's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're going to continue a journey that we started many months ago. A journey to analyze every episode of Season 2 of SpongeBob to break down what really made it so amazing. Really, just a nostalgic retrospective through some rose-colored goggles, highlighting every detail of the secret sauce which made this show the cultural phenomenon that it would become. If you missed part 1 of this video, I'll have it linked in the description box below. You don't really have to watch it first if you don't want to, we're not really following a story in order here. Also, just saying, I've already checked out all of Season 1 as well. If you feel like stepping back in time, I highly suggest checking that one out. I'll have it linked in the description box down below. Before we get into it, really quick, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you so much for clicking on this video and for taking some time to have a nice chill moment looking back on SpongeBob with me. I hope that you're having an amazing day, and I hope you enjoy the video. Make sure you drop a like and let me know in the comments what you think along the way. I love hearing what you guys think. Also, just saying, I spend many hours writing, recording, and editing these videos by myself. I'm a one-man operation, and I'm so thankful to be able to support my family by doing this. I have a lovely wife and 2 kids that are very thankful that I get to support them from home, and on top of that, I'm thankful that I get to support them by chasing my dreams. All that to stress so much again that I really appreciate you being here. My family literally depends on your eyes on this screen right now, and your time genuinely means so much to me. One last shameless plug, please consider becoming a member here on YouTube if you want to support me and my creative endeavors directly. I'm cooking up some cool members only emojis and some other stuff, and I promise it'll totally be worth it. Heads up though, apparently you can't do it on the YouTube iPhone app, so like if you're on iPhone, go find a computer or something. But with that being said, I don't want to waste any more of your time, so let's put our scuba gear right back on and dive back down to Bikini Bottom. We're gonna start out right where we left off. One of the most iconic episodes of the series. None other than Bubble Buddy.
Every day is a holiday for SpongeBob, even if he has to make one up.
Hey, everybody! It's Leif Erikson Day! Hinga-dinga-durgan!
SpongeBob tosses his blankets off and rows his bed to Patrick's Rock, where he tosses anchor. He knocks on the door, excitedly saying that it's Leif Erikson Day, but he's greeted by nothing but a giant sticky note telling SpongeBob that Patrick went off to get more giant paper from the store.
P.S. Happy Leif Erikson Day! Yerger hinder dinger.
Aw, so much for that. Maybe Sandy will play with me.
Over at Sandy's tree dome, SpongeBob's greeted by yet another note, this time from Sandy, saying that she went south for the winter. From there, SpongeBob ends up heading over to Squidward's house.
Hey, Squidward! Wanna play?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Darn, I wish I had a buddy to play with. I know, I'll make one.
SpongeBob tries making a friend out of a stick, a rock, and a sink, but sadly, none of those things really spark the kind of joy that SpongeBob is seeking. However, suddenly he gets the perfect idea.
I've got it.
SpongeBob sprints over to the Krusty Krab and drags Bubble Buddy inside to meet some of his friends. Squidward, first things first, is just pissed off that SpongeBob is here on his day off, but SpongeBob explains to him that he really wanted to introduce him to his new friend Bubble Buddy. Squidward laughs at SpongeBob for the fact that he's lowered himself to befriending a bubble, and in an effort to get him out of his hair, he attempts to take SpongeBob's order.
I'm not hungry.
Well, thanks for stopping by.
Wait! You haven't taken Bubble Buddy's order yet.
Why would I do that?
He's hungry.
He's an inanimate object. His money's no good here.
What are you saying, Mr. Squidward? Everyone's money is good here. At the Krusty Krab, we serves all kinds.
I'm not taking an order for a bubble.
Sure you are, or I'll fill your life with misery and woe. Even if you quit.
Squidward goes to take Bubble Buddy's order, but SpongeBob insists that Bubble Buddy let him choose what he eats. When SpongeBob looks at the menu and everything just sounds so good, he decides to order one of everything.
One of everything? Whoopee! Ow, ooh, 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 ow, ow, ow. I love Bubble Buddy! Squidward, show our best customer to his table.
Squidward carries Bubble Buddy over to his table as SpongeBob tells him that Bubble Buddy needs a drink. Squidward jokingly offers their finest bottle of shampoo, laughing his nose off, and SpongeBob unironically agrees, saying that's an excellent idea. Squidward brings back the bottle of shampoo and even goes out of his way to turn Bubble Buddy's straw into a bendy straw at SpongeBob's request. Bubble Buddy begins to sip the drink, however, SpongeBob tells Squidward that it tastes funny and that he wants him to try it.
Mr. Krabs!
Think of the customer.
Oh, silly me. I got the diet shampoo.
Later on, we see Squidward wheeling a cart full of patties to Bubble Buddy's table. He serves him one, and immediately SpongeBob opens up the top bun, starting to panic that there's cheese on these patties, and Bubble Buddy is lactose intolerant.
What should we do?
We? How about you take these patties and...
Mr. Squidward?
Don't worry, Bubble Buddy. Squidward will make a fresh batch.
What, is he allergic to bread, too?
Actually, he doesn't like the crust.
From there, the requests just get more and more obscene as we see Squidward having to remake these patties like 15 times over to make them absolutely perfect, including a full body massage for Bubble Buddy. By the time SpongeBob finally tells Squidward the right order, he's bringing back one of everything, no cheese, no crust, pickles to the left, 4 squirts of ketchup, wheat buns, non-dairy lettuce, and farm-raised tomatoes carnival style.
And if there's anything else I can do, please hesitate to ask.
SpongeBob and Bubble Buddy leave, completely satisfied by that delicious meal. He tells Mr. Krabs that the money is on the table, and once the two are gone, Mr. Krabs starts lecturing Squidward about how he told him so and that the customer is always right.
Remember that, lad, and you'll be as successful as me one day.
Oh, you're right, Mr. Krabs. I learned my lesson. And by the way, Bubble Buddy picked up the tab.
What's this?
Bubble money. At least they left a tip.
As Squidward and Mr. Krabs boil in anger, we see SpongeBob and Bubble Buddy arriving at the Goo Lagoon. SpongeBob is just through the roof excited about how many fun things that they're gonna do here. Right out the gate, a surfer fish runs up to them asking them to bury him, which SpongeBob is happy to do.
All done.
All right!
Bubble Buddy, you dig him out while I get some cotton candy.
Don't just stand there, dude. The tide's coming in. Oh! Dude?
From there, we see SpongeBob and Bubble Buddy causing all sorts of problems. They go up to a group of dancing bodybuilders, and when SpongeBob starts loudly singing about shaking that bubble butt, everyone gets self-conscious and leaves, trying to cover their backsides, worrying that their butts are big. From there, we see Mr. Krabs' daughter Pearl running into the famous surf bum Grubby Grouper.
Later, groupies! Grubby's gotta go catch some gnarly pounders!
Oh,
wash this flipper again.
Hey, Pearl, shake hands with Bubble Buddy.
What?
Then Bubble Buddy has to go to the bathroom, so SpongeBob puts him in the porta potty to do his business. Not long after, though, a line starts to form as everybody waits behind SpongeBob. We fast forward a few hours, and next thing you know, the line for the porta potty is miles long, with people even selling drinks and snacks to those in line. As SpongeBob stands there happily whistling and waiting, the guy in line behind him finally gets fed up with waiting.
2 hours is long enough. That's it.
Hey, Bubble Buddy, you're finished.
The fish all stand there in anger as they take in the fact that SpongeBob left them all waiting for a bubble. Just then, the bodybuilders chime in, saying that's nothing compared to him calling them fat. As they stand there munching on their celery stalks, Pearl chimes in crying.
He washed my flipper.
He owes me money.
He made me provide excellent service.
Dudes, he made me experience high tide. Oh!
The group continues to get more and more angry, elevating further. Next thing you know, they basically erupt into a full-blown angry mob.
I say, we tip something over!
Now what?
Get the lifeguard!
As the mob goes to get the lifeguard, Squidward stops them. He says that they shouldn't waste this senseless violence on him and that it's SpongeBob's bubble who should be the target of their anger. He then holds up a sewing needle, and just like that, the whole mob is in agreement that they need to pop the bubble. They go and find SpongeBob and Bubble Buddy, who are both just lounging around in some beach chairs.
Hey, everyone, have you met my friend Bubble Buddy?
Yes.
Hey, is this one of those sewing circles?
No.
SpongeBob asks everyone to step back with the pointy needles for Bubble Buddy's safety, but they all explain that Bubble Buddy has been nothing but a problem since he showed up and that he needs to go. SpongeBob panics and, in an effort to save Bubble Buddy, he blows him up a bit trying to escape.
Here we go! You'll never catch us now! Never! Ha ha! Never!
Never.
Enough seahorsing around, SpongeBob. Give us that bubble!
Everyone starts angrily chanting "Pop that bubble," but SpongeBob tries to plead with them. He says that to him this isn't just a bubble. It's his friend, and he loves him. SpongeBob cries his eyes out, asking if any of them have ever had a special friend, which seems to strike everyone's heart chords.
Nickel buddy, I'll never spend you.
Funny muffler. Jerky pal. Boo-boo keys.
Snake eyes.
We love you!
So, what do you say?
Pop that bubble!
They all pick up SpongeBob and throw him out of the circle as they close in on Bubble Buddy. SpongeBob stands by, yelling no in slow motion as Squidward thrusts his needle at Bubble Buddy. However, at the last second, something nobody ever saw coming happens.
Whoa! Hey, don't I got a say in this? I'll see you later, SpongeBob. Things are getting a little weird around here.
So long.
Happy Leif Erikson Day!
Everyone joins SpongeBob, dumbfounded by the fact that Bubble Buddy was actually alive this whole time. But since he's gone now, nobody really cares all that much as they all walk off, leaving SpongeBob to ponder his time with Bubble Buddy by himself.
Seems like only this morning I held his bottle. They blow up so fast.
Hi.
Now, this episode is one of those that really reminds me of exactly what made this season so amazing, and I'm really happy that we're starting out this video with this episode. Season 1 definitely wins in the aesthetic department, and it did have its fair share of random iconic moments. But to be honest, it almost feels like Season 1 had a good amount of iconic episodes in general, meanwhile Season 2 had iconic moments sprinkled in nearly every episode. All of the episodes that we're covering in this video feel like great examples of that, this one especially. There were so many iconic moments throughout this one, but furthermore, many moments that just spark so much joy. Taking it from the top, I absolutely love how this episode starts out with an emphasis on how, for SpongeBob, every day is a holiday. Then we spend like all of 40 seconds on Leif Erikson Day, like it's gonna play even a remote role here in what happens, and then the episode just takes an immediate turn, and that subject is just kind of left on Patrick's doorstep as SpongeBob instead focuses on just finding someone to play with today. Like, this whole setup and opening narration has absolutely nothing to do with anything that happened here, and like, that's the level of randomness that I love right there. I mean, honestly, you guys, I don't know anything about Leif Erikson, but I will say this moment right here was burned into my brain from the moment that I first saw this episode. I still, to this day, will throw out a random hinga-dinga-durgan here and there. I'm sure I'm not alone in that sentiment either. I'm sure there's a lot of us who only know of or first heard of Leif Erikson because of this moment right here. This is just such an amazing testament to how much of a cultural phenomenon that SpongeBob is. Hinga-dinga-durgan straight up doesn't mean anything. But odds are, you could go to your closest Walmart and walk up to every stranger that you see and say it, and, you know, like, probably 7 out of 10 of those people will probably know what you're talking about, or have at least heard that from this episode before, whether they remember it or not. Furthermore, I have to point out how much I love the difference between SpongeBob's
Hinga-dinga-durgan
and Patrick's like, I'm not sure which one I like more, but both of these characters saying this can live rent-free in my head for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to complain about it for a second. I am really curious about what you guys think though. Let me know in the comments, what do you like more? SpongeBob's Hinga-dinga-durgan or Patrick's Hinga-dinga-yinga? Moving on from there, another thing about this episode that really gets the happy chemicals flowing in the brain is SpongeBob's attitude about making a friend. His optimism is so incredibly massive. To a degree, SpongeBob is an innovator. I mean, nobody could play with him, so what does he do? Decides to make his own friend out of inanimate objects. Like, he wasn't even upset about it either. He's completely hyped. I feel like a lot of other people would be upset about feeling social yet not having anyone available to hang out with. Meanwhile, SpongeBob's over here screaming his heart out on the not moving teeter-totter about how great of a time he's having with a bubble. This guy is just having the time of his life and couldn't be less fazed by the fact that all of his other friends are busy at the moment, and honestly, sometimes I wish that I could just borrow some of that optimism from SpongeBob. He's constantly got so much energy and happiness, and I just wish I could squeeze some of it out of him to save for a rainy day. Moving on from there, and well, looking at the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I have to take a moment to reflect on how this episode perfectly embodies Squidward representing someone who's just offensively burned out on working in customer service.
Please come again. When I'm not working. Next.
The fake tone, the underhanded comments when the customer is out of earshot. I mean, this guy was actually looking forward to coming work today because it's SpongeBob's day off. But like, even then, he's still just absolutely miserable. Squidward has certainly worked far too many shifts and just needs a change of scenery. So many of us have been here, and this is absolutely relatable. Sure, this might be extremely hyperbolized and over-exaggerated in comparison to real-life representation, but still, it's hilarious to take in Squidward's piss-poor attitude as someone who's worked customer service and been screamed at by customers many a time. Mr. Krabs, on the other hand, absolutely cracks me up in this episode for a few different reasons. First of all, it needs to be noted that this man does not discriminate. Whether you're a bubble or a wanted criminal on the run paying with illegally obtained money, he does not mind. He'll take your money and he'll let you enjoy yourself in his restaurant no matter what. He'll even chew your food for you. I mean, good on him for treating every customer equally. However, his threat to Squidward to fill his life with misery and woe even if he quits? Honestly, as awful as this is, it gets a good laugh out of me every time. Like, Squidward's boss just straight up said, "Serve this customer or I will stalk you for the rest of your life, making you miserable." All over taking an order for a bubble who didn't even end up paying with real money. Mr. Krabs threatening Squidward like that is just so absurdly funny, and it's moments like these that I feel defined my weird taste in comedy at a young age. I have to take a second as well to point out that moment where Mr. Krabs points with his eyes, telling Squidward to take Bubble Buddy to his table. This right here never really got me as a kid, but as an adult, this got a pretty good chuckle out of me. My dad was very expressive with his eyes, and he would do this thing where he'd be looking at you and point at something with his eyes, and Mr. Krabs doing this totally reminded me of him. It gave me a good solid chuckle that I really needed. My dad was unlike Mr. Krabs in a lot of ways, but this right here, yeah, very spot on. I also loved how a good portion of this episode is just SpongeBob taking Bubble Buddy to the Krusty Krab and making Squidward's life a living hell for a little while. I mean, he made this poor guy drink shampoo and serve some extremely complicated patties on a Ferris wheel. Or let's not forget SpongeBob just blatantly forgetting all of Bubble Buddy's dietary restrictions and preferences until after Squidward makes all of the food over and over again. On that note though, I can't help but wonder, as far as the customer always being right goes, when does Mr. Krabs say no? He made Squidward do all of this stuff that SpongeBob was requesting. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs himself was chewing this old lady's food for her. I mean, there's so many health concerns on so many levels here, and I'm wondering at what point is the customer asking too much? Clearly not the point where Squidward is being asked to drink shampoo and basically poison himself, huh? I mean, depending on what chemicals they put in that shampoo and how much of it that he drank, this totally could have put Squidward in the hospital, or even worse. On that note though, hey, that's nothing in comparison to this guy who straight up died at the hands of SpongeBob and Bubble Buddy. In hindsight, anyone else thinking about how messed up it is that we would come to find out at the end that Bubble Buddy could move and talk this entire time? That means that Bubble Buddy genuinely could have done something to save this guy when the tide was coming in and he was about to drown. However, he clearly chose not to. This right here just came with so many dark implications as far as Bubble Buddy's character is concerned, but let's set that aside for today because we're focusing on what made this episode shine so bright, not the hidden secret undertones. I definitely want to point out how funny it was that SpongeBob danced with these bodybuilders, and when he said bubble butt, everyone got super self-conscious, worried that they had big butts and were fat. When, like, nowadays, people go out of their way to look up routines to build a shelf booty. By all means, I don't think anyone likes being called bubble butt, even nowadays. But, like, on another note, I feel like this one is kind of a sign of body image changing over the last 20 years. Whereas people once strived to have as small of a butt as possible, nowadays people tend to do the exact opposite, working out their butt specifically to make it bigger. Speaking of butts though, I got a kick out of the irony in the fact that all of these fish were standing in line, angrily waiting to use the bathroom for 2 hours, and all of a sudden, all of these other fish started selling drinks and snacks to people in line. I mean, obviously it's a cartoon gag, but the irony is too much when you think about how frustrating it would be to have someone trying to sell you more to eat or drink when all you need to do is the exact opposite very desperately. I also loved that part where the group breaks into an angry mob and Mr. Krabs suggests that they tip something over. Like, this was just so random and such a senseless act of misdirected anger. That wasn't particularly what got me, though. What really got me was the moment when they collectively say, "Get the lifeguard." There's just something so hysterical about this moment for me, and it's always cracked me up ever since I was a little kid and first saw it. And I will say, this moment really does hold up just as good as it did the first time. Focusing specifically on the end though, does anyone else think it's a little weird that everyone in Bikini Bottom just so happens to carry a sewing needle on them? Squidward had one readily available when it came time to lead the charge to get Bubble Buddy, and then oddly enough, every other person here had one too? That wasn't all they were carrying though, as we would learn that most of them also had their different special friends with them. Mr. Krabs had his nickel, or Larry with his jerky pal. These random little gags just made for such perfectly timed laughs, and I appreciate them through and through. I specifically loved how all of these people, the characters we know at least, had an inanimate object that seemed to fit their character well. I mean, I will admit I'm surprised to say that Mr. Krabs has never spent this nickel, however, Larry's best buddy being a piece of jerky on the other hand just makes perfect sense. All in all, this episode is a great one, and I love the tone that it sets going into the rest of this video. This episode is one that has its serious moments, but doesn't really take itself seriously at all from the first second. It is interesting to realize that other than this one episode, we wouldn't see Bubble Buddy whatsoever in the show until an entire decade later in the season 8 episode Bubble Buddy Returns. This one episode, however, did leave a lasting impression which would span further than a decade. Between Leif Erikson Day, Bubble Buddy himself, and all the funny random moments in general, this episode without a doubt proves to us to be such an excellent one. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 10 out of 10, and on that note, we're gonna keep chugging along. This next episode is one that I am so excited to talk about with you guys. This one is an episode that I just love on so many levels. The theme, the aesthetic, the jokes, it all represents what makes this season just so great. We're talking about none other than Dying for Pie. Now, this episode starts out with Squidward playing a piano on a beautiful deserted island. He enjoys himself playing a rather catchy tune until he hits a specific key that seems to have something wrong with it.
Order up, Squidward!
Squidward drives to work, parks his car, and throws on his hat, clearly already fed up with today before even walking into the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob, on the other hand, is exuberantly waiting for Squidward's arrival. As he walks in, SpongeBob talks to him, and of course Squidward just completely ignores him, going right to his post. When he gets behind the register, Mr. Krabs approaches him, asking if he's excited for Employee Brotherhood Day.
Mr. Krabs, you pay me to stand behind this register and take orders and give change. But you could never pay me enough to act brotherly toward that guy.
Mr. Krabs tells Squidward that his crummy attitude is exactly why they're doing this whole shenanigan in the first place, and he proceeds to tell him to buck up and pay attention. Just then, SpongeBob shows up to give Squidward his gift, a sweater that SpongeBob made all by himself. Mr. Krabs tells Squidward to go over and try it on.
I wasn't sure how big to make the hole for the head, so I used a watermelon for size. Do you love it?
It's a little itchy. What's this thing made of?
Eyelashes!
Now, may I resume my minimum wage duties?
After you present your Brotherhood gift.
Squidward says that he'll just buy SpongeBob a gumball or something, but Mr. Krabs tells him that doesn't count because it has to be a handmade gift. Squidward gets fed up and goes to leave, but when he opens the door, he's greeted by SpongeBob, who's made him another sweater, this time out of his tears. Squidward lets out a big old sigh, and feeling guilty, he decides to go figure out something that he can make for SpongeBob. He enters the kitchen, and while he's in there, he overhears some pirates outside struggling with a heavy load of pies.
Those homemade pies sure look good.
Oh, these aren't homemade. They were made in a factory. A bomb factory. They're bombs.
Oh, that's too bad. I thought they were pies, and I wanted to buy one.
Wait! We were just kidding about all that bomb stuff. That'll be $25, please.
So what flavor is it?
Apple. Raspberry.
Squidward tosses them some money, not really caring as long as it gets Mr. Krabs off his back. Over in Mr. Krabs' office, he drops the pie on his desk, saying that he baked it especially for SpongeBob. As Squidward goes to leave, Mr. Krabs stops him, saying he's got to make sure that he did it right, as he picks up a piece of the top crust.
Wait a second. This would go great with some milk. Whoop. So, you tried to kill me over a little New Age management, eh?
But, Mr. Krabs, I had no idea. I can explain.
As Squidward explains everything, SpongeBob goes to investigate the loud boom that he just heard. He opens the door and is immediately taken back and blown away to see a pie sitting on Mr. Krabs' desk, paying no mind to the massive hole in the wall nearby.
It's from Squidward to SpongeBob. Well, here you go.
And that's what happened?
$25? A bomb?
In the Krusty Krab!
The two run in a panic to get the pie, and when they get to Mr. Krabs' desk, they're shocked to see that it isn't there anymore. Nearby, however, is SpongeBob, who's licking his fingers and rubbing his stomach as he thanks Squidward for the delicious pie.
You had to kill him. The boy cries you a sweater of tears, and you kill him. How are you gonna live with yourself?
Kill him?
Squidward panics as he suggests calling the hospital for help, but Mr. Krabs says it'll do no good and that he's seen this before. He says that as soon as that pie hits SpongeBob's lower intestine, it's game over.
You've seen this before?
11 times, as a matter of fact.
Yes, hello, doctor, hospital. Won't do any good. 11 times? Oh, he's a goner. How do we tell him?
Mr. Krabs says that they shouldn't tell him. According to him, SpongeBob only has until about sunset, and he doesn't want to ruin his last day on Earth. In an effort to let SpongeBob enjoy his final hours, the two agree that they're not going to let him know about his impending doom. Squidward cries his eyes out, feeling so guilty that he basically sentenced SpongeBob to death.
I'm gonna make SpongeBob's final hours the best he's ever had. And this time, there's gonna be love. So much, he's gonna drown in it. Drown in it!
Note to self, watch out for Squidward.
Out in the lobby, we see SpongeBob cleaning some tables as Squidward approaches him. He tells SpongeBob that there's actually a surprise part 2 to his gift. As SpongeBob excitedly asks him what it is, Squidward asks what the most fun thing he can possibly think of is.
Actually, I keep a list of the most fun things I like to do. I call it my friendship list.
Great. Let me see it.
The things that are extra fun, I've written in red.
Everything's in red.
Yeah, I know.
We better start now if we want to get through this list before you die. Of anticipation.
The two leave the Krusty Krab, and as they do, we see Mr. Krabs in the window crying his eyes out and hanging up the help wanted sign. Squidward and SpongeBob get started on their list, which begins with SpongeBob showing his best friend Squidward to everybody in town.
Hi there, this is my best friend Squidward. Hey kids, check it out. This is my best friend Squidward. Hi, I want to show you my best friend Squidward.
Hey, Frank.
After that, we get a montage of them doing everything on SpongeBob's list, including showing Squidward to everybody in town while wearing a salmon suit, telling knock-knock jokes, and being friends in reverse, among many other peculiar things.
Turn left and stop. See? That's what it'd be like if you had me for a face.
I can't breathe. Are you sure you should be poking it like that?
Who's the doctor here? The last thing on the list is
Does it involve more dismemberment?
watch the sunset with Squidward.
Mr. Krabs' words echo in Squidward's mind as he recalls him saying that SpongeBob only has until sunset before the explosion. At that, Squidward decides that if SpongeBob wants a sunset, he's gonna get one. We cut to Jellyfish Fields, where the two friends are laying together, admiring the beauty of the sunset, separated by a big old brick wall that Squidward built between the two of them.
Sunsets always remind me of bowls of fruit. What do they make you think of, Squidward?
Explosions. I mean, erosion.
You know, if I were to die right now in some sort of fiery explosion due to the carelessness of a friend, well, that'd just be okay.
Squidward starts crying again, and right at that exact moment, SpongeBob starts burping and saying that he can feel something hitting his lower intestine. As the sun reaches its most beautiful point, beginning its final descent, SpongeBob begins the countdown, having Squidward finish it.
4, 3, 2, 1. Well, at least I was able to make his last few hours meaningful. I am such a good person.
SpongeBob stands there blowing bubble bombs, and Squidward is completely confused, wondering why SpongeBob is still here. He says that he's been working on a book full of more ideas for them to do, and that if they keep at it, they might just be able to finish it by January.
Forget the book! I spent the whole day with you doing all kinds of ridiculous things because you were supposed to explode!
You want me to explode?
Yes! That's what I've been waiting for!
Okay, I'll try.
Gary! You are gonna finish your dessert, and you are gonna like it!
That's not what I meant, you barnacle head!
SpongeBob applauds Squidward's explosion, but Squidward explains that he was supposed to explode into a million pieces because the pie that he ate earlier was a bomb. SpongeBob doesn't recall any pie, but when Squidward jogs his memory, bringing up what happened at work earlier today, it all hits him.
Oh, you mean this pie? I was saving it in my pocket for us to share. Let's eat. Oops.
Ouch.
Man, this one is just such a great episode. Everything about this one is just so hilarious to me. First of all, the fact that Mr. Krabs is forcing his only 2 employees into doing an employee brotherhood day is as equally weird as it is hilarious when you take into account that, like, there's no way that this would ever work, and I'm sure even Mr. Krabs knows that. Like, Squidward isn't a let's do icebreakers and get to know each other kind of coworker. There's absolutely no world where he would willingly participate in a work celebration like this, and even if he did, there's no amount of gift giving that has ever or will ever make him like SpongeBob. Regardless of that though, we have to acknowledge that SpongeBob's gift was super thoughtful. I mean, as itchy and comfortable as it looked, it was a pretty thoughtful gift. It's just a shame that it had to be made of his own eyelashes. Like, why couldn't he just use some yarn? I feel like this adds an extra layer of creepiness to this employee holiday that Squidward is already forcibly having to participate in. And that sweater of tears, though, oh man, this moment is just so iconic and it's incredibly hilarious. I love it so much. Another thing, though, that I really do want to bring up is these pirates. I'm just so confused. What are they doing? why do they have these bombs that look like pies? What factory did they pillage these from? And why was that factory making them? What are these even for? We know they aren't for selling. I mean, as soon as Squidward pulled out money, the captain was surprised that he wanted to buy one and instantly interested in selling one to him. In my opinion, his surprise at Squidward wanting to buy one tells us that they definitely didn't take these with plans of selling them to anyone. There are just so many questions here, and all of them are going to have to remain completely unanswered for now. On a semi-related note though, how funny is it that Mr. Krabs has seen this 11 times before? This right here also leads me to so many questions, but I think this is all a topic for another video that I might make in the near future. Moving in a different direction though, I have to talk about the sense of genuine regret and guilt that Squidward felt in this one. Of anything, this affirmed for us that he really does care about SpongeBob's life. At the end of the day, SpongeBob can be annoying and Squidward may not like him, but that doesn't mean that he wants him dead. He just wants him as far away from him as possible. In all reality though, taking in the feelings that Squidward was showing in this episode really did make me kind of happy. Him having this sense of appreciation for SpongeBob, it reminds me of another episode that we're going to be talking about later on this season. Another funny thing that I wanted to bring up though is that part where Mr. Krabs is talking with Squidward and he talks about how there's going to be so much love that SpongeBob is going to drown in it. To which we see Mr. Krabs pull out a piece of paper and write down, "Note to self, watch out for Squidward." This right here was genuinely so hilarious and the timing was just so perfect. I honestly can't help but wonder in hindsight though, is he saying to watch out for Squidward because of the whole pie thing in fear that he might do the same to him? Or is it directly as a result of Squidward screaming about SpongeBob drowning in love? Who's to say, maybe it's just a general fear of Squidward being crazy. Either way though, it was just so funny. On that note, we can't skip over Mr. Krabs putting the help wanted sign up in the window as Squidward and SpongeBob are leaving. Like, SpongeBob isn't even gone yet and he's already trying to replace him. That's kind of messed up, but also very, very much so true to Mr. Krabs' personality. What's even funnier though is that as they leave, SpongeBob notices him hanging up that sign and he says this.
Heads up, Squidward. Looks like they're gonna replace you.
Yeah,
Like, I just love the bold level of confidence that SpongeBob has here. He sees the sign going up and regardless of any circumstances, he immediately thinks that Squidward is getting the can, giving him a warning and everything. There's just so much that's side-splitting about this episode. Like, the sheer amount of morbid humor alone makes this episode stand out so much. I mean, Squidward telling SpongeBob that they better get started before he dies. Of anticipation. Or SpongeBob's list of most fun things that the two of them can do together, including open heart surgery? Like, as far as that one goes, I'm not sure which one of them this is supposed to be fun for, but either way, I'm a little concerned. All things considered, you guys, I feel like this episode has made me realize that you'd be nearly hard-pressed to find an episode in this season that didn't have an iconic moment in it. Every episode is just pure gold as far as comedy goes. They really went so hard with the silly humor in this season, and this episode is one of those that showcases that in an excellent way. This one had quite a few iconic moments. My favorite though was probably SpongeBob exploding in the end. Him yelling about Gary finishing his dessert is just one of those moments that I find myself hilariously mimicking all the time, and it brings me so much happiness. My second favorite though would have to be the Sweater of Tears. Specifically when Mr. Krabs says, "The boy cries ye a sweater of tears and you kill him." This right here actually joined my repertoire of sayings fairly recently and I love it so much. I find myself getting a great laugh anytime I find the chance to throw that reference out there because it just presents itself at the most hilarious of times. With all of that being said, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 9.5 out of 10. That's not to knock this one, or to say that it isn't as good as the last one, but like, whereas the entirety of the Bubble Buddy episode is iconic, I feel like this is one of those where the whole episode itself isn't exactly iconic, but it's chock full of those great iconic moments. I mean, if you randomly asked me how Bubble Buddy starts, I could certainly hit you with a Hinga-Dinga-Durgan off the top of my head. But if you were to have asked me how this episode started, I would never have remembered that it begins with Squidward dreaming about playing piano on an island. With that in mind though, hey, 9.5 is basically a 10 anyways, so do with that what you will. Next up, we're going to check out an episode that has its share of hilarious moments, but I will admit it's one that I often get mixed up with another episode. A lot of times, I get this one confused with the Season 3 episode Crabborg, where SpongeBob thinks Mr. Krabs is a robot because of a scary movie that he watched. However, this one is vastly different from that episode. I'm sure you'll get why I make that mistake though. We're talking about Imitation Crabs.
The Krusty Krab, home of the Krabby Patty, with its top secret formula known only to those brave enough and intelligent enough to comprehend its culinary complexity.
Look, Mr. Krabs, I'm doing it! I'm doing it!
Outside of the Krusty Krab, we see Plankton in a robot fish costume preparing to go inside of the restaurant and steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. He throws on his mustache and he heads on in.
Are you SpongeBob SquarePants?
Why, yes. Yes, I am!
Then you've just won $1 million. You just have to answer one question. What is the Krabby Patty secret formula? Yes!
The Krabby Patty formula is the sole property of the Krusty Krab and is only to be discussed in part or in whole with its creator, Mr. Krabs. Duplication of this formula is punishable by law. Restrictions apply. Results may vary.
The robot begins to shake as Plankton erupts in anger inside of it. He hops out and begins threatening SpongeBob when Mr. Krabs walks up and he notices what's going on. He snatches Plankton and grabs a straw from a customer's drink, proceeding to spitball him across the street over to the chum bucket.
That Plankton is a clever beast. You've got to keep a sharp eye out for him, SpongeBob. The Krabby Patty law must be enforced. The future of the Krusty Krab depends on it.
Don't worry, Mr. Krabs. As long as these pants are square and this sponge is Bob, I will not let you down!
SpongeBob, could you let me down?
From there, we see the lunch rush continue as two customers are sitting together and eating. One of them starts talking randomly, wondering about what's in the secret formula, and SpongeBob overhears from the crow's nest above, causing him to leap into action, thinking that it might be Plankton up to no good again.
Your disguises can't fool me this time, Plankton!
Everyone at the Head Enhancement Clinic said nobody would notice.
SpongeBob! You're scaring away me money!
SpongeBob walks up to Mr. Krabs and says that he's just trying to protect the secret formula, but Mr. Krabs tells him that's no excuse for ripping people's heads off. He reminds him of the most important rule: don't ever discuss the secret formula with anybody other than him. He assures SpongeBob that as long as he follows that rule, everything will be just fine.
I always thought the most important rule was why do today what you can put off till tomorrow.
What is today but yesterday's tomorrow?
Mr. Krabs takes Squidward to a storage room in the Krusty Krab, telling him that today he wants him to take inventory of every single item in there, down to the last pickle. As he closes the door and leaves, we see a robot that looks like Mr. Krabs hiding behind the door as it turns on and approaches Squidward.
What now, Mr. Krabs?
That's right. I am Krabs. Your boss, your ruler, your master. Ha, ha, ha.
You're not Mr. Krabs.
Hey, why don't you take the rest of the day off?
Whatever you say, Mr. Krabs.
As Squidward leaves, SpongeBob comes in and Plankton is through the roof excited, thinking this is his moment to get the formula. Immediately, SpongeBob takes note of Mr. Krabs' new cold metal shell, saying that he doesn't look so good, However, Plankton says it's just a metal suit that he made to keep the formula safe. Suddenly, Plankton hears Mr. Krabs calling for SpongeBob from outside the door, so he has to think on his toes to distract him.
Look, a jellyfish.
I got it! I got it! I got it! I got it!
SpongeBob!
Hey, Mr. Krabs, what happened to your metal pants?
Don't go all loopy on me, boy.
Mr. Krabs tosses SpongeBob on the ground, telling him to take out the garbage nearby. We see SpongeBob pick it up, and as soon as he turns around to take it out, the robot Krabs interrupts him, taking the garbage and vaporizing it with his heat vision. As soon as he gets to asking about the formula again, however, Mr. Krabs comes sprinting through the door yet again.
SpongeBob! I'm not paying you to stand around. Get back to the kitchen.
But I thought you wanted to ask me a question.
Yes. Why aren't you working harder?
I don't know, Mr. Krabs. I don't know.
From here, Plankton begins to get frustrated, realizing that there's no way that he's going to get the formula with Mr. Krabs interrupting every few minutes. Just then, he gets a diabolical idea. He pulls out a penny that he's been saving for a rainy day, and he tosses it out of the robot, causing it to roll on the floor.
That sound. It sounds like the pitter-patter of money. Hey, where are you going, beautiful?
Mr. Krabs! Wow!
Stop! Please! Wait!
With the real Mr. Krabs out of the way, Robot Krabs has nobody to stop him from getting the formula out of SpongeBob. He heads right to the kitchen and immediately asks him about it.
I thought we might discuss the Krabby Patty secret formula.
Isn't that a microphone?
What? Why, yes it is. I must get this shirt cleaned. All right, now tell me the secret formula.
But, sir, we haven't done the secret handshake yet.
Oh yes, here, let's shake.
Ah, we don't shake with our hands, remember?
Robot Krabs asks SpongeBob to talk him through the handshake, and it begins with them balancing glasses of chocolate milk on their heads while standing on one leg and singing the Bikini Bottom national anthem. From there, though, it just gets more intense as 6.5 hours later, we see Plankton sweating buckets, pulling levers to keep up and put himself inside of a cannon and shoot himself through a flaming hoop before devouring a plate of spaghetti.
Yum yum, this spaghetti sure is good. Belch.
Meatball, meatball, spaghetti underneath.
Ravioli, ravioli, Great Barrier Reef. Okay, now let's hear that formula.
Sorry, no can do, Mr. Krabs.
Plankton starts screaming at SpongeBob, saying that he did everything that he said and that he followed all of the rules. He asks why he can't tell him, and SpongeBob says that Mr. Krabs made that rule himself. They're never allowed to speak about the formula. It always stays inside of this bottle. Plankton reaches out for the bottle, and as he edges closer and closer, the penny from earlier rolls through the door, and along with it, Mr. Krabs.
Gasp.
How could you do this, SpongeBob? Giving me secret formula to this imposter!
Don't listen to him, SpongeBob. Remember, ravioli, ravioli, give me the formuoli.
Mr. Krabs pleads with him, saying that he's the real Mr. Krabs. Meanwhile, the robot Krabs says not to listen to him because he's clearly a robot. The two then start arguing with one another, but SpongeBob cuts them both off, screaming,
Until I know who the real Mr. Krabs is, nobody moves, nobody gets hurt.
Tartar sauce! Take it easy with that thing, son. Ah!
I'll do the talking around here.
SpongeBob says that he's gonna ask them some questions that only the real Mr. Krabs could answer to decide who's real and who's the fake. He starts by asking what time the Krusty Krab opens, which Robot Krabs is able to easily answer correctly, causing the real Mr. Krabs to sweat a bit. Next, he asks how much a Krabby Patty costs, which Mr. Krabs is easily able to answer until SpongeBob amends the question, adding on Wednesday, which causes the Robot Krabs to get the correct answer, citing the sale price on Wednesdays.
You're starting to look pretty phony right about now. I'd be nervous if I were you. Now only the really real Mr. Krabs could answer this. If we're discussing the secret formula on the third Wednesday in January and it's not raining outside after we gargle with vanilla pudding, what do?
That's an easy one. You just let's see, if it's January with vanilla pudding, you pass?
Mr. Krabs gets blasted onto a plate of fish and chips as SpongeBob rolls him out of the Krusty Krab. He goes back to the kitchen and happily hands Robot Krabs the formula, telling him that he knew he was the real Mr. Krabs all along.
Thank you, Sponge Dude.
Whoop! Don't forget your lucky penny.
Yoink.
This must be your lucky day. Ah!
Self-destruct coin slot has been activated. 10 seconds till detonation.
Plankton sits there, regretting his decision to install a coin-operated self-destruct feature in his robot. He runs over to the chum bucket, and as soon as he gets there, his robot costume explodes, blowing up the entire restaurant and sending the formula rolling back over to SpongeBob, who picks it up, realizing that he just sprayed the real Mr. Krabs with tartar sauce and rolled him out of his own restaurant.
Yum, yum. Back, you hungry hand! Back! Help!
Gee, Mr. Krabs, I'm sorry. I thought you were a phony.
Whew. That's okay, me lad. Long as the secret formula's safe again. However, that penny's coming out of your paycheck.
Really?
Oh man, this episode is one that really brought us so many memorable moments. However, before we get into that, I need to bring up something that I'm remembering. I could have swore that I brought this up in one of my videos about Season 1, but in all the digging I did, I cannot for the life of me find it. Maybe it's in a different SpongeBob video I made, I'm not sure, but regardless, I remember at some point talking about a live-action burger featured in the episode Plankton. It's in that scene where SpongeBob is about to forcibly drop it into his device that analyzes the molecular structure of whatever you put into it. In that one, I talked about how this burger right here has gained itself a reputation over the years, being featured in multiple episodes. Now, when I made that connection, I didn't stop to consider how many times that we would see this burger pop up over the seasons as we continue. That same exact burger from Season 1 would appear in the beginning of this episode with the same background and everything. At first, it took me a moment to connect the dots, but without a doubt, this is that same burger. I know we've seen it in Plankton, and now we've seen it in this one. I don't think we've seen it in any other episodes up to this point, and if there was any I forgot, someone let me know. But at this point, our official burger count that we have seen so far in the series is at 2. Something else I find myself realizing is that Mr. Krabs' eyeballs are just so expressive in this season. 2 episodes so far in this video, we've seen him pointing with and doing weird things with his eyeballs. I love this so much because in Season 1, they played a lot with making Mr. Krabs seem really pirate-like and very stern and serious. However, the subtle things like him moving his eyeballs funny like this really help us see him as more of a goofball than some serious ex-pirate. One thing I do want to point out that I was pretty surprised about was the fact that SpongeBob ripped this guy's head off, and that it just so happened that it was a prosthetic to make up for the fact that his head was too small for his body. This right here was just such a really weird gag. It felt so much like weird for the sake of weird. I talked about that a bit in the last video covering this season, but this one definitely captures that vibe as well. I mean, I love a lot of the random comedy, but there's certain gags like this one that just kind of confused me as a kid and still confuse me just a bit now. With that being said though, that's more of a me problem, maybe there's something going over my head, or maybe I'm just trying to make sense of something that isn't really supposed to make sense. One thing I did find really funny though was how Squidward was so immediately distrusting of the robot crabs, knowing that it was obviously a fake. However, when it gave him the day off, he was all for it and happy to take orders from Robot Krabs as if he was the real one. This right here, on one hand, is pretty hilarious and just capitalizes on how much Squidward doesn't really care that much about his job. But on the other hand, I find it funny because you'd think that Mr. Krabs would go out of his way to employ people who care about guarding the secrecy of his formula. I mean, sure. be a flat monotone jerk all day long, but if the secret formula gets leaked, then there goes their exclusivity and along with it, Squidward's job security. That formula is what keeps Squidward in a job, so you'd think that he'd care about it at least even a little bit. I mean, I feel like this kind of ties a little bit into the way that SpongeBob made robot crabs jump through so many hoops to discuss the formula just to tell him that they weren't going to discuss it. I totally recognize that as a gag, that line of actions is the most SpongeBob thing that he could have ever possibly done in that situation. But like, on a weird note, I feel like that's kind of why Mr. Krabs hired SpongeBob. He really is the perfect person to hold the formula with Mr. Krabs because he genuinely is that guy who will jump through all of these hoops with you for like 6 hours just to not talk about it. And well, as hilarious as that is, it highlights a massive contrast between SpongeBob and Squidward as employees. It does need to be said though, sure, he didn't care, but at least Squidward could tell the robot was a fake. SpongeBob, on the other hand, literally was so oblivious that he couldn't even tell the difference between the robot and the real Mr. Krabs when they were both directly in front of him. One of them is straight up shooting out exhaust while accusing the other of being a robot, and SpongeBob is just completely none the wiser. I also have to bring up how hilarious it was when Plankton threw that penny and sent it rolling through the Krusty Krab, and it just so happened to roll right around Mr. Krabs' desk. The way that Mr. Krabs talked to that penny as it rolled past him just had me dying.
Hey, where are you going, beautiful?
Now, there were a lot of odd bits in this one, but one of the biggest things I find myself questioning is how, of all things for SpongeBob to threaten these crabs with, it was a pressurized hose of tartar sauce. I'm honestly just a little mixed on this one. Like, it's silly, and I'll give them that much, but it feels a little too on the nose leaning into the undersea theme. Like, why would these fish be eating anything with tartar sauce? Why is this even in the Krusty Krab in the first place? How do these fish even know what tartar sauce is? Furthermore, what the heck is this basket of freshly fried fish and chips doing at the bottom of the ocean? Anyone else get such a huge kick out of Robot Krabs having that coin-operated self-destruct slot on his belt buckle? And of course, to destroy this robot, it literally only costs you 1 cent. And like, anyone could just walk up to him at any point like SpongeBob did, and if they have a penny, Plankton is totally screwed. I just loved that gag so much. The whole plot of this episode is genuinely hilarious, and I appreciate this one for what it's worth. Sure, I easily get it mixed up with the other robot episode, but that doesn't take away from how great that this one is. In all reality, this one serves as kind of an early look at how the classic Plankton Tries to Steal the Formula episode was evolving over time. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and give this one an 8.5, and we're going to go ahead and move along to the next episode. Next up, we're going to dive into an episode that I know has made some people divided. For me, I know it sends mixed signals for sure. We're going to be looking at the episode known as Wormy. This one starts out at Sandy's Tree Dome, where she's heading out of town and has asked her best friends, SpongeBob and Patrick, to do some pet sitting for her while she's gone.
Pet sitting? Won't that hurt them?
Perhaps you should have asked someone else.
Gee, Patrick, I didn't know you spoke bird.
No, that's Italian, SpongeBob.
Sandy walks up and starts giving them instructions and showing them around to a few more pets, like her pet cricket and pet snake. After wrapping it up, Sandy grabs her suitcase and heads for the front door. They all say their goodbyes, but at the last second, SpongeBob notices one final pet that Sandy had overlooked, forgetting to tell them how to care for it.
Oh, that's only Wormy. He don't eat much.
Look at him, Patrick. Isn't he great? Hey, little fella.
Kitchy, kitchy, goo-goo.
Aw, look. Isn't he just precious? Let's take him out to play.
We see SpongeBob, Patrick, and Wormy playing hide-and-seek together, dancing, and just enjoying their time together.
'Cause that's what friends do. That's what friends do. 'Cause that's what friends do. That's what
SpongeBob and Patrick lay in the grass with Wormy, reflecting on how amazing of a time that they've had and talking about how they wish today never had to end. Just then, SpongeBob pulls out a little best friend medal that they put on Wormy as they put him back in his jar before going home.
Don't be sad, little buddy. We'll be back first thing in the morning for frolic and fun.
Why must the sun set on this perfect day? Sleep well, Wormy.
But don't be sad, Patrick. It's only until tomorrow.
The sun sets, and as nightfall envelops Bikini Bottom, we close in on Sandy's tree dome in pitch black of night. Inside Wormy's jar, the little caterpillar that they became best friends with attaches himself to a branch and forms a cocoon, bursting out as a butterfly a mere few moments later. From there, we see the sun rising as SpongeBob jumps out of bed, excited to run over to Sandy's to see Wormy. Patrick joins him, and just like that, the two are off.
And then we're gonna play tag, and then we're gonna color, and then we're gonna build a house of cards.
We're back, Wormy! Wormy! Wormy!
Wormy! Where's Wormy? What's that thing?
He's gotta be in here. I think something bad happened to Wormy.
He left his best friend Ribbon behind.
SpongeBob and Patrick begin to connect the dots of what they think happened to Wormy. Just then, the butterfly lands on SpongeBob's water helmet, and we get a nice close-up view of what Wormy looks like from SpongeBob's perspective. I know good and well that a couple of you in my audience have shown a great level of disgust for this particular scene. So this right here is your warning. I'm only going to show it once, so please look away for all of 4 seconds so you don't have to see it in 3, 2, 1.
What is that thing?
I don't know, Patrick. But whatever it is, it must have eaten Wormy!
Why does this keep happening to me?
Quick, Patrick! We gotta make a run for the door!
SpongeBob and Patrick sprint for the door to escape. However, before they can get there, Wormy shows up, blocking the path and scaring them out of escaping. The two run and hide behind Sandy's tree as they contemplate how they're going to escape from the best friend-eating monster.
Let's not panic. We just have to stick together. Remember, it's 2 against 1. Right, Patrick? Patrick? Ah! He's eating Patrick! Patrick, you're alive!
I am?
Patrick, we can't just leave this horrible monster in Sandy's house. It might eat Sandy's other pets.
Or worse, it might eat Sandy's pets.
No, it might eat Sandy!
SpongeBob and Patrick start attempting to capture the butterfly so that they can get it out of Sandy's house, but their efforts go without much success. They first try trapping it in a jar by putting a ringing phone in it, thinking that it'll get trapped when it goes to answer the phone. But when that doesn't work, they end up instead using Patrick as bait.
Just stay here and wait for the monster. I'll go get the net.
SpongeBob, hurry up with that net!
Hold on, Patrick!
I really don't taste that good, Mr. Monster.
We see the same exact close-up shot of the butterfly as we did before, and Patrick ends up jumping away in fear. He crashes through SpongeBob's net and ends up splitting his helmet open on Sandy's tree. SpongeBob ends up cornered by the butterfly, and as he panics, fearing for his life, he remembers that he has some bubble soap in his pocket that would work perfect for this scenario. SpongeBob pulls out the wand and blows a perfect bubble, capturing the butterfly.
Yeah! We did it, Patrick! Sandy's gonna be so proud of us. We got that horrible monster out of her house. And best of all, her pets are safe, because that horrible creature is now headed straight for the Krusty Krab!
SpongeBob and Patrick run to the Krusty Krab, where they see the butterfly is about to fly through the front door. Fearing they won't reach it in time, the two decide to use the secret entrance to beat it there. They arrive right in the dining room as the butterfly is flying through the door and Squidward is taking a picture of Mr. Krabs holding $1. SpongeBob and Patrick tackle Squidward and Mr. Krabs into the boat that houses the register as they warn them of the serious danger in the Krusty Krab right now.
There's a A monster out there.
Is he a paying customer?
Oh no, Mr. Krabs. It doesn't want to eat Krabby Patties. It wants to eat you.
Just like it ate Wormy.
Wormy.
Why?
We'll never forget you, Wormy.
Squidward, fed up with all the crying, decides to look at the monster for himself. The others join him, and when Squidward and Mr. Krabs see the little butterfly flying around, they hop out of the boat, assuming that it's completely harmless and that SpongeBob and Patrick are overreacting because they've never seen a creature like this before. They even say that they think it's kinda cute. However, all of this changes when they get a closer look at it and see the same sight that SpongeBob and Patrick saw in Sandy's tree dome.
Squidward?
Mr. Krabs?
It ate them, and there it goes. First Wormy, then Squidward, Mr. Krabs. That flying monster has eaten 3 friends too many. We must inform the citizens. Evil has surfaced. The fate of Bikini Bottom is in our hands, Patrick.
We see the two friends ride on out of the Krusty Krab and towards one of the busiest parts of town. SpongeBob says that this is a very delicate situation and that it must be treated with care and sensitivity.
Run, everybody, run! Monster!
The montage continues as SpongeBob and Patrick continue to tell everyone in Bikini Bottom that a flying monster is going to eat them. Things escalate rapidly, and next thing you know, we see the entire city in flames as everyone is running in fear, and things have just completely erupted into absolute chaos.
We did it, Patrick! We saved the city! Just think what might have happened if we didn't tell everyone about the monster!
About the what?
We then get a nice montage of all the townspeople running away from Wormy as he chases them all from building to building, leaving them unable to escape his pursuit. From there, we fast forward an unknown amount of time to see the entire town of Bikini Bottom deserted as a bus is arriving. Sandy steps off of the bus and she's blown away by how the town looks like it's been completely destroyed.
Where's everybody? Oh, hey there, Wormy. You weren't supposed to change till I got back. That ought to hold you, little guy. Howdy, SpongeBob.
Sandy caught the monster!
I didn't know I'd be missed so much. Golly, maybe I should go out of town more often.
Now, this episode is one that I recognize gives me a bit of mixed signals, like I said, but all in all, I really enjoy this episode. What's crazy for me is that we get to experience Wormy being a caterpillar for all of 2 minutes, but in that short amount of time, he made such a huge impact. It felt like we were able to get so close to this little caterpillar in the short amount of time that we knew him, and it genuinely was so heartwarming. In all reality, I blame this completely on the song that was featured during the montage.
A friend is a friend to the end of the end, that's forever and a day.
There's just something about this song that really tugs at the heartstrings, and I feel like it contributed a lot to the soft feelings towards Wormy. I mean, as soon as SpongeBob and Patrick saw his jar and that Sandy had overlooked him, they were immediately intrigued by the little guy. For us as viewers, sure, some of us probably felt the same, but when they played this song along with the montage, that was when we all really felt like he was a best friend that had always been there. I will admit though, I do find it kind of funny that of all the different animals here that SpongeBob and Patrick could have befriended, they picked a caterpillar. There were so many different choices of animals, but of course the overlooked caterpillar in a jar is what piques their interest the most. One of the few animals here that can't really do much to play with them. With that being said though, I was really given the impression that he did everything he could to play with them and that he really did enjoy their time together. I mean, after that whole day of playing with SpongeBob and Patrick and getting close to them, he has his transformation. And as soon as SpongeBob comes back after that change, Wormy immediately lands on his water helmet, almost as if he was trying to say, "Hey guys, it's me, you know, your best friend?" But sadly, they didn't recognize him. Then from there, poor Wormy, now as a butterfly, spent the rest of the episode chasing them, or literally anyone who would play with him. Likely because he finally got a taste of what it was like to get some attention. I do want to point out though, it was kind of silly that Wormy's metamorphosis occurred overnight. I mean, this process right here usually takes like 2 weeks for monarch butterflies. The fact that Wormy was able to do it overnight is nothing short of a miracle. However, maybe it was the power of SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship and love that fueled his rapid overnight transformation. As far as Wormy's actions in this episode go, I like to think that he was just so excited to be able to finally fly around and play with SpongeBob and Patrick that he just couldn't wait to transform into a butterfly. Sadly for him though, once he made that transformation, everyone was just terrified of him and didn't want to be his friend anymore. On that note though, I have to point out that it is kind of odd that SpongeBob and Patrick don't seem to know what butterflies are in this one. Yet, if you recall back to the season 1 episode Bubble Stand, we all saw SpongeBob blow little butterflies out of bubbles. You would think that he'd be familiar with butterflies considering that he has made one before. Now, circling back to something that I brought up earlier, this episode is one that I know for sure divides a few people in my audience specifically because of that close-up of Wormy. That nasty, gross-out close-up humor is something that a ton of people have a distaste for, and I don't blame them. For me personally, this one didn't bother me all too much, but that's just me. I more have an issue with later SpongeBob, where we would get like a close-up gross-out scene in pretty much every other episode. What I do find hilarious about the close-up in this one though, is that it isn't even a close-up of a monarch butterfly. This is stock footage of a horsefly. Monarch butterflies don't even look like this. With that being said, I'm sure that they were rolling on a specific budget and there likely wasn't already existing stock footage of a monarch butterfly that close that they could use. So they were likely making do with what they could find. For me, that almost makes the close-up a little less icky too. I mean, it isn't even a depiction of what Wormy would really look like in real life anyways. Moving along from there, I gotta say that I love how excellent the back and forth between SpongeBob and Patrick was in this one. I mean, super early on we hear Patrick whistling at a bird who's chirping in a tree and he calls it speaking Italian. Then, right after that, SpongeBob hears a cricket chirping and tells it that he doesn't speak Italian. The subtle humor here between two different animals that chirp just had me so confused as a kid, but as an adult, I absolutely love this gag. Or, what about the moment when SpongeBob runs from the butterfly thinking that it ate Patrick only to find him hiding in a barrel, and this happens.
Patrick, you're alive!
I am?
That line gets me every time. The way these two interact specifically in this episode is just so incredibly hysterical. Like when we get to the point where they're approaching the busy part of town and SpongeBob is stressing how important it is that they stay calm, just for the both of them to immediately start panicking, freaking out, and just causing mass hysteria. On that same note though, it killed me seeing SpongeBob and Patrick being so happy about how they saved the city. I just about died laughing when SpongeBob said who knows what would have happened if they didn't warn everybody about the monster. I mean, ultimately guys, it's hilarious realizing that every single citizen in Bikini Bottom would have been better off because the destruction caused in Fear was leagues worse than anything that Wormy did. Speaking of Wormy though, we have to take a sec to recognize how ironic it is that Mr. Krabs told SpongeBob and Patrick that they were only afraid of the butterfly because they had never seen a creature like that before. However, they had a reason to be afraid. They were scared because they thought that it had eaten Wormy. Mr. Krabs and Squidward, on the other hand, weren't afraid of this creature at all until they got a close-up look at it. Then they were terrified of it simply because of what it looked like. They didn't even stop to consider that it was harmless and that it didn't hurt them. Once they saw what it looked like, they just kind of freaked out. This right here was a great example of why you should never assume the worst of someone or something just because of what it looks like. Just because horseflies have creepy faces doesn't mean that butterflies are scary. Unrelated, but did anyone else love how SpongeBob had finger puppets of his friends? I don't know why this sparks so much joy, but it really does for me. It's really the small things for me sometimes, and this little detail was just so adorably hilarious. As far as this episode goes on the whole, I will admit that though I do have those mixed feelings, I still love this one. It made me a little sad seeing Wormy being treated so badly after he grew up, but ultimately, SpongeBob and Patrick had no idea that the butterfly was even Wormy to begin with. The other thing I kinda have a gripe with is that the ending just felt so abrupt here. I really wish that we could have gotten at least a moment at the end where SpongeBob and Patrick connect the dots that what they thought was a monster was actually Wormy the whole time, then said sorry? Or maybe ran off to play with him? I don't know. With that being said though, that doesn't make this one a bad episode by any means. Wormy is such an iconic character and this episode was full of funny hijinks through and through. I'm gonna go ahead and give this one an 8.9 and we're gonna swim along to the next episode. Now, running down towards the end of this video, I'm really glad that we're ending it on this one. To a degree, I feel like we're almost saving the best one for last. Of the 5 episodes that we're digging into today, this one might be my favorite of the bunch. We're looking at none other than Patty Hype. This episode starts out at the Krusty Krab on a very slow day. We see a huge layer of dust on everything as SpongeBob repeatedly dusts away webs from a spider, trying to keep himself busy.
36 days without a customer.
So hungry.
Ah, Mr. Krabs, a customer!
No food. 3 days.
Hold on, me bucko! Food's on the way! Hey, you got money, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Krabs orders SpongeBob to bring this guy some food, and he shows up with a tray holding a Krabby Patty and a drink. However, this guy is rather unenthused, saying that it lacks pizzazz.
I mean, what is the theme here? Underwater? It's boring!
Food, water, atmosphere.
Nobody goes to a restaurant for atmosphere. They go for food!
Hey, Tom!
Fred! Hey, you want to eat at the Krusty Krab?
Nah, let's go to the Shell Shack. They've got a talking dog.
Great! Say, what's a dog?
Mr. Krabs panics, realizing that he's losing business to another restaurant, and he says that he needs to come up with a gimmick to get more people in the Krusty Krab. As SpongeBob tries to chime up, telling him that he has a good idea, Mr. Krabs completely ignores him, saying that he himself has an idea.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you buy lots of Krabby Patties as I bury myself alive! No free refills!
Hey, everyone, listen! The talking dog at the Shell Shack is singing! Come on!
After that doesn't work, Mr. Krabs finds himself pacing back and forth in the Krusty Krab, worried that he won't be able to come up with a good idea. He sweats going out of business, begging for an idea. All the meanwhile, ignoring SpongeBob, who's behind him, repeatedly begging to tell him his idea.
Neptune in heaven, I need an idea!
Mr. Krabs, I have an idea!
What in the name of money are you waiting for, boy? Tell me!
Okay, Mr. Krabs, prepare yourself. Don't bother sitting down, because you'll just stand up when you see this. Ta-da!
Great Barrier Reef! That patty's spoiled!
SpongeBob explains that it's not tainted meat, it's painted meat. He pulls out a whole palette of different colored Krabby Patties, which he's officially named Pretty Patties. Mr. Krabs gets an eyeful and immediately breaks out in laughter, calling Squidward over to laugh at SpongeBob with him. The two continue to mock SpongeBob further, calling his idea stupid.
What's next? Sequined milkshakes?
Bowtie French fries?
No.
Pretty patties, pretty patties.
Stop it!
SpongeBob stands there crying his eyes out until he gets fed up with being made fun of. He looks down at his patties and he thinks to himself before telling them off and leaving, saying that he's gonna start his own restaurant. The two pay him no mind as they laugh him right out the door. Back at SpongeBob's house, we see him approach Patrick, who's standing outside.
Patrick, are you angry too?
Yeah.
What's the matter?
I can't see my forehead. What's your problem?
I have a good idea, and no one else thinks so.
Me too. Inflatable pants. What's your idea?
I'm gonna open up a restaurant and sell pretty patties.
Forget my dumb idea. That's great.
We fast forward to SpongeBob and Patrick standing behind a few tables as they officially open up shop for the first time. SpongeBob expects the hungry customers to be lining up, however, it doesn't really go the way that he had hoped it would.
I'm ready!
I'm ready.
I'm ready! Patrick, how long have we been sitting here?
I gotta draw a new battery for this.
SpongeBob starts worrying that maybe Mr. Krabs and Squidward were right and that this is a dumb idea, and he begins to cry. Thankfully, though, he has Patrick there to pep talk him and tell him that sometimes we have to go deep inside ourselves to solve our problems. When SpongeBob says that he's scared, Patrick offers to go inside for him.
Sorry. Stupid inflatable pants.
Did you find anything?
Huh?
Hey, do you sell food here?
Yes, sir. We sell pretty patties.
That thing's green.
The customer keeps laughing, and when Patrick joins him, SpongeBob feels completely defeated. However, when he pulls out the whole tray, this guy stops laughing and is blown away that there's a purple patty. Having been won over by his favorite color, he takes a bite and is so pleased by the burger that he shouts to the sky above how amazing that pretty patties are. As that's happening, we cut over to Mr. Krabs' office where he's crying while watching a soap opera on TV and sharing some popcorn with one of the many spiders inhabiting the Krusty Krab. All of a sudden, his show is interrupted by a breaking news broadcast alerting the citizens of Bikini Bottom about the latest culinary sensation to sweep the city, none other than Pretty Patties.
How can you make money with such a stupid idea?
And how can you not make money with such a brilliant idea?
At first, we didn't know what to do with all the money. We tried burying it, shredding it, and burning it. But in the end, we decided to just give it all away.
Come again, sir.
I'm getting back in line.
Mr. Krabs begins to panic, running for the door and saying that he's got to see this for himself. As soon as he steps out of the Krusty Krab, though, he runs right into the back of the line for Pretty Patties.
I never had a line.
Who's number 46,853?
I never had 46,853 customers.
Here you go, sir. Stay pretty.
Mr. Krabs approaches SpongeBob with tears in his eyes. SpongeBob talks to him about how great it is that Pretty Patties are such a massive hit, and Mr. Krabs congratulates him, saying that he's probably forgotten about the Krusty Krab. At that, SpongeBob gets pretty sad himself, saying that he hasn't, and that sometimes he really misses the old days of the Krusty Krab. This gives Mr. Krabs a sly idea.
I bet you miss Squidward, and the grill, and the crow's nest.
Yeah. And you know what I miss the most, Mr. Krabs? That tiny squeaky sound you get when you rub two pickles together. You know what I mean, Mr. Krabs?
Yes, I do, lad.
Mr. Krabs tells him that the Krusty Krab is only a short walk away, so he should come visit for old time's sake. However, SpongeBob says that he can't go because no one would be able to watch the stand.
I'll watch the stand for ye.
You will?
No, I've got a better idea. I'll take this old roadside stand off your hands for keeps. And in exchange, I'll give you the Krusty Krab. With Squidward, the grill, and all those squeaky pickles.
What did you say, Mr. Krabs?
Here's the key to the Krusty Krab. She's yours now.
SpongeBob stands there completely in awe that he's the owner of the Krusty Krab now. Mr. Krabs tells him to run to her because she's waiting for him, but he says that he can't feel his legs. At that, Mr. Krabs picks him up and tosses him on top of the crowd, telling them to get him to the Krusty Krab. Next thing you know, SpongeBob is inside of the Krusty Krab, kissing the floor, making it rain buns, and standing behind the register just as happy as can be. Back at the stand, Mr. Krabs announces that Pretty Patties is now under new management, and just like that, we cut to the next day where he's setting up shop for the day. He stands there waiting for his customers, but when they arrive, they are none too thrilled.
We want a refund, Krabs.
Your dumb Pretty Patties turned my face purple! Look what I got under my kilt! And look at our tongues!
What's wrong with you?
We want our money back.
When this fish clicks the light back on, Mr. Krabs is nowhere to be found. We see him running away while the angry mob chases him, leaving a rainbow trail behind him. He makes it to the Krusty Krab and searches frantically for his key.
Where's my key? SpongeBob! SpongeBob, let me in! SpongeBob! SpongeBob! Let me
Now, this one is an episode that is such a great one for so many reasons. Taking it from the top though, I do have to admit how odd it is that the Krusty Krab could survive a stretch like 36 days without serving a single customer. I mean, you'd think that they would go out of business with a stretch that long of paying employees and not having any profits coming in. But when we keep in mind that SpongeBob pretty much pays Mr. Krabs to work at the Krusty Krab, it makes sense. Furthermore, how messed up is it that this dude comes crawling in, nearly dying from not having eaten in days, and when he begs for some help, Mr. Krabs is like, "You have money, right?" I mean, at first, I found myself wondering, what if he didn't have money? Surely Mr. Krabs would have rudely told him to get out of there and come back with some money. That's not to say that Mr. Krabs should just feed the whole world for free, but like, this is one guy, and he straight up couldn't even walk because he was so weak from exhaustion and starvation. With that being said though, this jerk would rather starve than eat a Krabby Patty anyways, so not like he would have taken it if it was free anyways, and he's kind of doing this to himself by choice for being so picky. Moving on from there though, I have so many things I want to talk about here. I've got to bring up that gag when those two fish talked about the Shell Shack while standing outside of the Krusty Krab. One says that they have a talking dog, and as they excitedly head there, the other guy's like, "What's a dog?" This joke right here always got such a solid cackle out of me as a kid. It's just so dumb, but it's so clever at the same time, and I love it. Or that iconic moment when SpongeBob walks up to Patrick and asks if he's angry too, and Patrick says that he's mad because he can't see his forehead. This is just another one of those moments that's forever going to live in the Hall of Fame of SpongeBob quotes. The fact that Patrick is just standing there outside of his house angrily because he can't see his own forehead is just so stupid funny. Moving on from there, I gotta say you guys, I never realized how messed up it is that Mr. Krabs' initial gimmick was to bury himself alive to get more people to come buy Krabby Patties. Like, let's just have that sink in for a minute here. And I mean, like, after he did it, nobody even really cared. They all just left to go to the Shell Shack. This man full-blown buried himself alive in the name of getting more business, and not a single person cared. They all just wanted to go see the singing dog. On that note though, I do kind of wish that we got maybe a little more on the Shell Shack. They bring up this talking dog and everyone gets so excited like this place is super cool. It always kind of had me curious as to what it's like there. But another thing I do find myself curious about, though, would be the legalities of SpongeBob opening up Pretty Patties. I mean, SpongeBob knows the Krabby Patty secret formula. He's worked that grill for years, so I'm sure he's got the formula memorized multiple times over. When it comes to Pretty Patties, though, I'm pretty sure that he used the same formula as he did with Krabby Patties, just with some added food coloring. I'm totally curious if this is one of those things that Mr. Krabs could sue somebody over. I mean, SpongeBob was full-blown selling those burgers, possibly with Mr. Krabs' patented recipe. With all that in mind, though, I also have hopes that Mr. Krabs wouldn't do that to SpongeBob, especially when the idea was already offered to Mr. Krabs to begin with and he passed on it. With that being said, though, he is a massive jerk, and, well, he's so greedy I wouldn't put it past him. Speaking of Mr. Krabs, though, I certainly want to bring up how this man literally does everything that he does for the money. And, well, it shows in the things that happen to him. Meanwhile, SpongeBob chases his passions, and as a result, good things tend to come his way naturally. This episode is an excellent metaphor for that in general. It's a perfect showcase of how doing something for the wrong reasons can have a tendency to blow up in your face pretty catastrophically. Like, we straight up saw Mr. Krabs go as far as trading his entire restaurant that he's been building up for years for a tiny little burger stand that was having its 15 minutes of fame. With that being said, though, it's Mr. Krabs we're talking about. Of course all he cares about is money. Whereas SpongeBob has this sentimental attachment to the Krusty Krab and a deep love for it, Mr. Krabs mainly just sees it as his means to make a buck. On the note of SpongeBob, though, as much as him feeling defeated by everyone laughing at him made me sad, I really do appreciate the hilarious antics that we saw from him in this one. Like the dream he had where he was growing old while waiting for customers to show up and his pineapple rots behind him as he eventually ends up turning into a gravestone. That was just so morbid, but hearing his "I'm ready" change as he got older and older was just too funny. The way that they drew old SpongeBob was absolutely hilarious as well. I also just loved the way that SpongeBob is so obsessed with that tiny little squeaky sound you get when you rub two pickles together. Not gonna lie, I've tried so many times to rub two pickle chips together, and not once have I gotten them to make any sound whatsoever. And while that is mildly disappointing, I always find myself laughing at the absurdity of me rubbing pickles together because a cartoon sponge told me it makes a noise that I would like. If there's anything that I wanted to touch on a bit before we wrap things up, it would be Patrick and his role in things here. He played a really funny role kind of backing SpongeBob up on Pretty Patties for the first day, but after that he just kind of disappears, which I did find a little bit weird. Regardless of that though, he was just so funny in this episode. On top of being angry about not seeing his forehead like we talked about earlier, I loved that bit where SpongeBob asks him how long they've been standing there, and he looks down at his watch, which is drawn with crayon. This right here was just so side-splitting for me, but the icing on the cake was him saying that he needs to draw a new battery. I've always loved this gag so much. But my favorite gag in this episode might just have to be inflatable pants. Of all the things for Patrick to invent, of all the things he could have came up with, this right here just feels so fitting to his character. Of course he invented inflatable pants. And as if the pants themselves weren't funny enough though, that moment when he crawled inside of SpongeBob and the pants blow up on their own, it just killed me. It's the silly little stuff like this right here that really sets the humor out in this season, and I absolutely have so much appreciation for that. This episode, in my opinion, deserves a 10 out of 10, and I'm confident in that. Honestly guys, I absolutely love getting the time to reflect on SpongeBob like this. It's so amazing to just take some time to step away from all the dark and morbid topics and just be able to shine some bright and happy vibes for a while. Season 2 of SpongeBob will always be one of my all-time favorites, and as we continue onward, I find myself excited for what's to come in this journey. But what do you guys think? Are you excited for any of the next episodes that we're going to check out? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Of course, massive shout out to my friends in the True 90s Kids tier. You all are absolutely amazing, and I appreciate you all more than words could ever say. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like and stick around for another one. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Peace.